How do you handle an isolated pawn in the Slav defense? Have you ever faced an isolated pawn in the Slav defense and wondered how to manage it effectively? This situation can be tricky, but with the right strategies, you can turn it to your advantage. Let's break down how to handle an isolated pawn, often called an isolani, in this popular chess opening. First, let's define what an isolated pawn is. An isolated pawn is one that has no neighboring pawns on either side. In the Slav defense, this often happens when white plays moves that lead to the exchange on d5, leaving black with a lone pawn on d5. Now, how can you handle this isolated pawn? The key is to recognize that it can be both a strength and a weakness. On one hand, it controls important central squares and can give you more space. On the other hand, it can become a target for white's pieces. One of the first steps is to develop your pieces effectively. Make sure your knights, bishops, and queen are positioned to support the isolated pawn. This development is crucial for both defense and counterattack. Next, focus on controlling the squares around the isolated pawn. You want to prevent white from launching an attack. Place your knights on strong central squares and use your pawns to block any potential threats. Managing your overall pawn structure is also important. Sometimes, playing e6 can help stabilize the center. However, be aware that this might limit the mobility of your light-squared bishop. Creating counterplay is another vital strategy. Look for chances to advance your pawns on the queen side or initiate a king-side attack. This can distract white from focusing solely on your isolated pawn. When you reach the endgame, the isolated pawn can become a liability if not handled properly. Maintain active pieces to compensate for the pawn's weaknesses. In practical terms, develop your pieces quickly to their best squares. This can help neutralize white's attacks and create opportunities for your own play. Always think ahead and anticipate white's plans. If you see an attack coming, consider making prophylactic moves to slow it down. Lastly, keep your pawn structure flexible. This flexibility allows you to respond effectively to various strategies from white. Sometimes, delaying certain pawn moves or keeping your pieces on adaptable squares can make a big difference. By understanding these strategies, you can effectively manage an isolated pawn in the Slav defense. What might seem like a disadvantage can actually become a dynamic opportunity for you to challenge your opponent.